You went to a lot of work to create these ruses. And it sounds to me like you had a series of ruses that you had kind of in your hip pocket.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Matt from Untrained Terrain, and welcome. Today we're talking about Gary Ridgway, or as he's better known, the Green River Killer. Born February 18th, 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah, United States, to parents Mary and Thomas Ridgway, Gary Leon Ridgway was second of three boys born to the couple. His brothers, Gregory and Thomas, were often seen as being favored above Gary, especially when it came to Gregory, who was widely regarded as the most accomplished sibling, having run for student office and later majoring at physics at a reputable college. By comparison, Gary had an IQ in the low 80s. His father, Thomas Newton Ridgway, was a bus driver, and his mother, Mary Rita Ridgway, was a sales clerk at the local J.C. Penney. However he felt about his brother, his real familial angst was against his mother. He would later tell prosecutors that he had a sexual attraction to his mother when he was younger, and that he remembered one time when he was a young teenager that he wet the bed because Gary wet the bed until he was the age of 13. And after wetting the bed, he said he had an inappropriate encounter with his mother where she washed his genitals, so he basically said his mother molested him after he wet the bed. Now, he wet the bed till he was 13 years old, and of course, like all the rest, he tortured animals, putting cats in freezers and whatnot. Now, later in his life, Gary's old classmates from elementary school said that Gary was abused by his parents, and they would hit him with a belt or a stick as a punishment for minor offenses. So it goes without saying that his childhood was troubled. I mean, growing up, Gary's relatives said that his mother was domineering and that Gary witnessed his fair share of violent fights and arguments from his parents. School life was hard for Gary since he had a low IQ, and the fact that he was also dyslexic. He was even held back a year in school, and when he was 16, stabbed a 6-year-old boy. So, apparently this 6-year-old boy was playing in the woods by his home, dressed as a cowboy, playing with a stick, as kids do. And 16-year-old Gary went up to him and asked him to go in the woods with him to build a fort. And when the pair went in the woods, Gary stabbed the 6-year-old boy. Now, luckily, the 6-year-old boy survived, and he would recall later in hospital when he was recovering from this injury that Gary walked away laughing, saying he just wanted to know what it felt like to kill somebody. And Gary was never caught for this, so he was never punished for it. Ridgway graduated from Tyee High School when he was 20 in 1969 and married his 19-year-old girlfriend, Claudia Craig. He would then go on to join the United States Navy and be sent to Vietnam to work on board a supply ship. Now, Gary said throughout his deployment in the Navy, he would often have sex with prostitutes from Vietnam, and he even contracted gonorrhea and other venereal diseases, but he said this just pissed him off. He continued to do it, and when he got home, his wife divorced him after a year of marriage. After meeting and marrying his second wife, Maria Winslow, Ridgway became religious and would go door to door reading the Bible, even insisting that his wife follow the street teachings of their pastor. Although, despite his beliefs, he would continue to sleep with prostitutes and even wanted his wife to participate in sex in public in inappropriate places, sometimes in areas where victims' bodies were later discovered. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that his marriage would end later in 1972, and this seemed to be like the turning point where his life went from fucked up to even more fucked up. I mean, he had a wife with his kid, and he was still sleeping with prostitutes. She left him, and then he just went ballistic. The body of Wendy Lee Cofield was found on July 15, 1982, in the Green River in Seattle, Washington. Now, according to Wendy's mother, she would visit her for the last time on July 8, 1982. She had claimed her foster mother had given her permission, but it was later found out she was only allowed to go for a walk. Now, when she left her mother's house, she would never be seen again, and when her body was found, it was deemed that she was strangled by her own pair of pants that she was wearing. Now, at first, police thought this was an isolated incident because it was just only one body. But then, bodies started piling up more and more in the Green River, and even the news media got involved, and they came up with the name the Green River Killer. Now, Gary Ridgway would often pick up his victims at the SeaTac Strip, which is like a road that connects Seattle to neighboring Washington. And apparently back then it was just full of prostitutes. It was like the red light district, basically. He preyed on vulnerable women, sex workers, and runaways. After his first victim, Ridgway went on a rampant killing spree. In just 5 weeks, he picked up 5 more women. By August 8, 1982, all these women would be picked up, raped, and dumped by Gary in the river. By August 8, 1982, all 5 of these women were dumped in the river after being raped and strangled by Gary, and this is where his killing spree really started. This is where he really started getting more and more victims. And in August 1982, the Green River Task Force was assembled to catch the Green River Killer. They would search every blade of grass and every drop of water in and surrounding the Green River. Now, all the victims that were found by police were manually strangulated, and Ridgway would later recall that he felt immense pleasure by watching the life leave the women's bodies as he strangled them. By the end of summer 1982, Ridgway would have picked up, raped, strangled, and dumped 9 young women on the banks of the Green River, he even admitting to having sex with his victims long after they were deceased. Now, the Green River Task Force had nothing to go on. All they had to go on was that this person was sick enough to rape these people, strangle them, and dump them. They had no usable evidence, and nobody suspected Gary. He was just a regular guy. His neighbors would say that he was just your average Joe, you know? He was just your average guy that would be mowing the lawn when you drive down the road, you know? He would wave to you as you drive by. Just your average guy. Now, on the evening of April 31st, Ridgway would drive to the SeaTac Strip, and he would pick up 19-year-old Maria Malvar and take her in his truck. Her boyfriend, who was also her pimp, saw her get into Gary's truck and had a bad feeling, so he followed him in his own vehicle, but they lost him at a red light. The next morning, he and her father went looking all around town for Marie, but when she didn't come home, and eventually saw Gary's truck. Now the pair called the police, and a detective would come and speak to Gary at the house where they found the truck, which was Gary's home. Now, the officer said he had nothing to go on and didn't pursue the lead, and Marie's body would be found 20 years later badly decomposed in the Green River. Now, sadly, she would turn out to be the 25th victim of Gary. And police said they had nothing to go on, so they really didn't pursue it, and he was left on the list of suspects, but he was quickly put down on the list because they had no information regarding him. Now, police really wanted to solve this case because there was bodies piling up almost every week. And the community was also in an uproar because they had these families with missing daughters and wives, and they wanted answers. And the police couldn't give them answers because the killer was leaving them no evidence to go on. Now, in 1985, at a Parents Without Partners meeting, Ridgway would meet his third wife. Now, Ridgway's third wife, Judith Lorraine Lynch, thought very highly of him and said he treated her like a newlywed. She would even say, "I think I saved many lives because I loved him." She never for a moment suspected Gary of anything that he was secretly doing. Now, in 1987, the death toll of the Green River Killer would reach an astonishing 46 victims. Now, when these green fibers showed up on several victims' bodies, police obtained a warrant to search Ridgway's house and his workplace because these green fibers showed that some victims were in the same environment soon before or soon after they were killed. Now, on April 8, 1987, police searched Ridgway's home and they found nothing. However, the upstairs neighbor of Ridgway and his wife gave the police photographs showing a green carpet in Ridgway's home, proving that there was a green carpet there and the green fibers could have come from Ridgway. And the police did take Gary in for questioning, and they would swab his mouth for saliva to get DNA. And thanks to breakthroughs in 2001 in forensic technology, the Washington Crime Labs found links in the DNA recovered from victims and saliva taken from Ridgway 14 years earlier. In 2001, Ridgway was arrested for soliciting prostitution when he tried to pick up an undercover police officer. Now, they had enough evidence to charge him with 7 murders, but they couldn't charge him with the 48 that the Green River killed because they just didn't have the evidence. But they had enough for the death penalty. Prosecutors, in hopes of finding closure for the families of the victims, offer to get rid of the death penalty if Gary confesses to the rest of the killings, and he would end up confessing to dozens of murders he had committed. Ridgway was sentenced to 48 consecutive life sentences on December 18, 2003. He was also charged and sentenced for 10 years for each victim for tampering with evidence and had 480 years added to his sentence. Hi guys, I just wanted to say thanks for watching, and if you like what you see, like and subscribe for more.